Mohammad with the magic finger. Once upon a time there lived a woman who had a son and a daughter. One morning she said to them, "I've heard of a town where there is no such thing as death. Let us go and dwell there." So she broke up her house. When she reached the city, the first thing she did was to look about and see if there was any churchyard. And when she found none, she exclaimed, "This is a delightful spot. We will stay here forever." By and by, her son grew to be a man, and he took for a wife a girl who had been born in the town. But after a little while, he grew restless and went away on his travels, leaving his mother, his wife, and his sister behind him. He had not gone many weeks when one evening his mother said, "I am not well. My head aches dreadfully." "What did you say?" inquired her daughter-in-law. "My head feels ready." The daughter-in-law asked no more questions, but left the house and went in haste to some butchers in the next street. "I've got a woman to sell. What will you give me for her?" she said. The butchers answered that they must see the woman first, and they all returned together. When the butchers took the woman and told her they must kill her. "But why?" she asked. "Because," they said, "it is always our custom that when persons are ill and complain of their head, they should be killed at once. It is a much better way than leaving them to die a natural death." "Very well," replied the woman, "but leave, I pray you, my lungs and my liver untouched, till my son comes back. Then give him both." But the men took them out at once and gave them to the daughter-in-law, saying, "Put these away until your husband returns." And the daughter-in-law took them and hid them in a secret place. When the old woman's daughter, who had been in the woods, heard that her mother had been killed while she was out, she was filled with fright and ran away as fast as she could. At last she reached a lonely spot far from the town where she thought she was safe, and sat down on a stone and wept bitterly. As she was sitting and sobbing, a man passed by. "What's the matter, little girl? Answer me. I will be your friend." "Sir, they've killed my mother. My brother is far away. I have nobody." "Will you come with me?" asked the man. "Thankfully," she said, and he led her down and down under the earth until they reached a great city. Then he married her, and in course of time she had a son, and the baby was known throughout the city as Mohammad with a magic finger, because whenever he stuck out his little finger, he was able to see anything that was happening as far as 2 days' distance. By and by, as the boy was growing bigger, his uncle returned from his long journey and went straight to his wife. "Where are my mother and sister?" he asked, but his wife answered, "Have something to eat first, and then I will tell you." But he replied, "How can I eat till I know what has become of them?" Then she fetched from the upper chamber a box full of money which she had laid before him, and saying, "This is the price of your mother. She sold well." "What do you mean?" he gasped. "Oh, your mother complained one day that her head was aching, so I got into butchers and they agreed to take her. However, I have got her lungs and liver hidden until you came back in a safe place." "And my sister?" "Well, when the people were chopping up your mother, she ran away, and I've heard no more of her." "Give me my mother's liver and lungs," said the young man, and she gave them to him. Then he put them in his pocket and went away, saying, I can no longer stay in this horrible town. I go to seek my sister. Now, one day the little boy stretched out his finger and said to his mother, "My uncle is coming." "Where is he?" she asked. "Still 2 days' journey off, looking for us, but he said he will be here soon." And in 2 days, as the boy had foretold, the uncle had found the hole in the earth and had arrived at the gate of the city. All his money was spent, and not knowing where his sister lived, he began to beg of all the people he saw. "Here comes my uncle," cried out the little boy. "Where?" asked his mother. "Here at the house door." And the woman ran out and embraced him and wept over him. When they both could speak, he said, "My sister, were you by when they killed my mother?" "I was absent when they slew her," she replied, "and I could do nothing. I ran away. But you, my brother, how did you get here?" "By chance," he said. "After I had wandered far, I did not know I should find you." "My little boy told me you were coming," she replied, "when you were yet 2 days distant, all alone of all men. He has a great gift." But she did not tell him that her husband could change himself into a serpent, a dog, or a monster whenever he pleased. He was a very rich man and possessed large herds of camels, goats, sheep, cattle, horses, and asses, all the best of their kind. And the next morning the sister said, "Dear brother, go and watch our sheep, and when you are thirsty, drink their milk." "Very well," he answered, and then he went. But soon after she said again, "Dear brother, go and watch our goats." "But why? I liked tending the sheep better." "Oh, it is much nicer to be a goat herd," she said, and so he took the goats out. And when he was gone, she said to her husband, "You must kill my brother, for I cannot have him living here with me." "But, my dear, why should I? He has done me no harm." "I wish you to kill him," she answers, "for if not, I will leave." "Oh, all right then," he said. "Tomorrow I will change myself into a serpent and hide myself in the date barrel, and when he comes to fetch dates I will sting him in the hand." "That will do very well," she said. And when the sun was up the next day, she called to her brother, "Mind and go the goat." Try this again. "Go and mind the goats." "Yes, of course," he replied. But the little boy called out, "Uncle, I want to come with you." "Delighted," said the uncle, and they started off together. After they had got out of sight of the house, the boy said to him, "Dear uncle, my father is going to kill you. He has changed himself into a serpent and has hidden himself in the date barrel. My mother told him to do it." "And what am I to do?" asked the uncle. "I will tell you. When we bring the goats back to the house and my mother says to you, 'I am sure you must be hungry. Go get a few dates out of the cask,' just say to me, 'I am not feeling very well, Mohammad. You go and get them for me.'" So when they reached the house, the sister came out to meet them, saying, "Dear brother, you must certainly be hungry. Go and get a few dates." But he answered, "I'm not feeling very well. Mohammed, you go and get them for me." "Of course I will," replied the little boy, and at once ran to the cask. "No, no!" his mother called out after him. "Come here directly. Let your uncle fetch them himself." But the boy would not listen, and crying out to her, "I'd rather get them," and thrust his hand into the date cask. Instead of the fruit, it struck something cold and slimy. He whispered softly, "Keep still. It is I, your son." Then he picked up his dates and went away to his uncle. "Here they are, dear uncle. Eat as many as you want." And his uncle ate them. When he saw that the uncle did not mean to come back to the cask, the serpent crawled out and regained his proper shape. "I'm thankful I didn't have to kill him," he said to his wife, "for after all, he is my brother-in-law, and it would have been a great sin." "Either you kill him or I will leave you," she said. "Well, well," sighed the man, "tomorrow I will do it." The woman let that night go by without doing anything further, but at daybreak she said to her brother, "Get up, brother, it is time to take the goats to pasture." "All right," cried he. "I will come with you, uncle," called out the little boy. "Yes, come along," replied he. But the mother ran up, saying, "The child must not go out in this cold, or he will be ill." To which he only answered, "Nonsense! I'm going, and it isn't so you're talking. I'm going! I am! "Then go," said she. And so they started, driving the goats in front of them. When they reached the pasture, the boy said to his uncle, "Dear uncle, this night my father means to kill you. While we are away, he will creep into your room and hide in the straw. Directly when you will get home, and your mother will say to you, 'Take that straw and give it to the sheep.' And if you do, he will bite you." "And what am I to do?" asked the man. "Oh, do not be afraid, dear uncle. I will kill my father myself." "All right," replied the uncle. As they drove the goats back towards the house, the sister cried, "Be quick, dear brother, and go and get some straw for the sheep." "Oh, let me go," said the boy. "You are not big enough. Your uncle will get it," replied she. "We will both get it," answered the boy. "Come, uncle, let us fetch the straw." "All right," replied the uncle, and they went to the door of the room. "It seems very dark," said the boy. "I must go and get a light." But when he came back with one, he set the straw to fire, and the serpent was burnt. Then the mother broke into sobs and tears. "Oh, you wretched boy, what have you done? Your father was in the straw, and you have killed him." "Now how was I to know my father was lying in the straw instead of the kitchen?" said the boy. But his mother only wept more and sobbed out, "From this day you have no father. You must do without him as best you can." "Why did you marry a serpent?" asked the boy. "I thought he was a man. How did you learn those odd tricks?" As the sun rose, she woke her brother and said, "Go and take the goats to the pasture." "I will come too," said the little boy. "Go then," said his mother, and they went together. On the way, the boy began, "Dear uncle, this night my mother means to kill us both by poisoning us with the bones of the serpent, which she will grind into powder and sprinkle in our food." "And what are we to do?" asked the uncle. "I will kill her, dear uncle. I do not want either father or mother like that." "All right," said the uncle. When they came home in the evening, they saw the woman preparing supper, and secretly scattering the powdered bones of the serpent on one side of the dish. On the other, where she meant to eat herself, there was no poison. And the boy whispered to his uncle, "Dear uncle, be sure to eat from the same side of the dish as I do." "Okay," said the uncle. So they all three sat down to the table, but before they helped themselves, the boy said, "I am thirsty, mother. Will you give me some milk?" "Very well," she said, "but you had better begin your supper." And when she came back with the milk, they were both eating busily. "Sit down and have something too," said the boy, and she sat down and helped herself from the dish. But at the very first moment she sank dead upon the ground. "She has got what she meant for us," observed the boy, "and now we will sell the sheep and cattle." So the sheep and the cattle were sold, and the uncle and nephew took the money and went out to see the world. For 10 days they traveled through the desert, and then they came to a place where the road parted in two. "Uncle," said the boy. "Well, what is it?" replied he. "You see those two roads? You must take one and I the other, for the time has come for us that must part." But the uncle cried, "No, no, my boy, we'll keep together always." "Alas, that cannot be," said the boy. "So tell me which way you'll go." "I will go to the west," said the uncle. "One word before I leave you," continued the boy. "Beware of any man who has red hair and blue eyes. Take no service under him." "All right," replied the uncle, and they parted. For 3 days the man wandered on without any food, until he was very hungry. Then, when he was almost fainting, a stranger met him and said, "Will you work for me?" "By contract?" asked the man. "Yes, by contract," replied the stranger, "and whichever of us breaks us shall have a strip of skin taken from his body." "All right," replied the man. "What shall I have to do?" "Every day you must take the sheep out to pasture, and carry my old mother on your shoulders, taking great care her feet shall never touch the ground. And, besides that, you must catch every evening 7 singing birds for my 7 sons." "That is easily done," said the man. Then they went back together, and the stranger said, "Here are your sheep, and now stoop down and let my mother climb on your back." "Very good," answered Mohammed's uncle. The new shepherd did as he was told, and returned in the evening with the old woman on his back, and the 7 singing birds in his pocket, for which he gave to the 7 boys when they came to meet him. So the day passed, each one like the other. At last, one night he began to weep and cried, "Oh, what have I done that I should perform those hateful tasks?" And his nephew Mohammed saw him from afar and thought to himself, "My uncle is in trouble. I should go and help him." And the next morning he went to his master and said, "Dear master, I must go to my uncle, and I wish to send him here instead of myself, while I serve under his master. And that you may know him and no other man, I will give him my staff and put my mantle on him." "All right," said the master. Mohammed set out on his journey, and in 2 days he arrived at the place where his uncle was standing with the old woman on his back, trying to catch the birds as they flew past. And Mohammed touched him on the arm and spoke, "Dear uncle, did I not warn you to never take service under any blue-eyed, red-haired man?" "But what could I do?" said the uncle. "I was hungry, and he passed, and we signed a contract." "Give the contract to me," said the young man. "Here it is," replied the uncle, holding it out. "Now," continued Mohammed, "let the old woman get down from your back." "Oh, no, I mustn't do that," he cried. But the nephew paid no attention and went on talking. "Do not worry about yourself in the future. I have seen my way out of it all. And first you must take my stick and mantle and leave this place. After 2 days' journey straight before you, you will come to some tents which are inhabited by shepherds. Go in there and wait." "All right," answered the uncle. Then Mohammed, with the magic finger, picked up a stick and struck the old woman with it, saying, "Get down, you look like a sheep. I want to go to sleep." "Oh, certainly," replied she. So Mohammed lay down comfortably under a tree and slept until evening. Towards sunset he woke up and said to the old woman, "Where are the "You never told me anything about that," she replied. "Oh, didn't I?" he answered. "Well, it is part of your business, and if you don't do it, then I shall just kill you." course I will catch them, cried she in a hurry, and ran about the bushes after the birds, till thorns pressed her feet, and she shrieked from pain and exclaimed, "Oh dear, how unlucky I am, and how abominably this man is treating me!" However, at the last she managed to catch the 7 birds, and brought them to Mohammed, saying, "Here they are." "Then we'll go back to the house," said he. When they had gone some way, he turned to her sharply. "Be quick and drive the sheep home, for I do not know where the field is." And she drove them before her. By and by the young man spoke. "Look here, old hag, if you say anything to your son about my having struck you, or about me not being the old shepherd, I'll kill you." "Oh, no, of course I won't say anything." When they got back, the son said to his mother, "That is a good shepherd I've got, isn't he?" "Oh, splendid," answered she. "Why, look how fat the sheep are, and how much milk they give." "Yes, indeed," replied the son, as he rose to get supper for his mother and for the shepherd. In the time of Mohammed's uncle, the shepherd had had nothing to eat but the scraps left by the old woman. But the new shepherd was not going to be content with that. "You will not touch your food until I've had as much as I want," whispered he. "Very good," replied she, and when he had had enough, he said, "No, eat." But she wept and cried, "This was not written in our contract. You were only to have what I had left you." "If you say one more word, I will kill you," said he. The next day he took the old woman on his back and drove the sheep in front of him till he was some distance from the house, when he let her fall and said, "Quick, go and mind the sheep." Then he took a ram and killed it, lit a fire and broiled some of its flesh, and called to the old woman, "Come and eat with me." And she came. But instead of letting her eat quietly, he took a large lump of meat and rammed it down her throat with his crook, so that she died. And when he saw she was dead, he said, "That is what you get for tormenting my uncle," and left her where she was, while he went after the singing birds. It took him a long time to catch them, but at length he had the whole 7 hidden in his pockets of his tunic, and then he threw the old woman's body into some bushes and drove the sheep before him back to their fold. And when they drew near the house, the 7 boys came out to meet him, and he gave each a bird. "Why are you weeping?" said the boys as they took their birds. "Because your grandmother is dead." And they ran and told their father, and when the man came up and said to Mohammed, "What was the matter? How did she die?" Mohammed answered, "I was tending the sheep when she said to me, 'Kill that ram, I am hungry.' So I killed it and gave her the meat, but she had no teeth, and it choked her." "But why did you kill the ram instead of one of the sheep?" asked the man. "What was I to do? I had to obey orders." "Well, I must see to her burial," said the man. And the next morning Mohammed drove out the sheep as usual, thinking to himself, "Thank goodness I've got rid of that old woman. Now for the boys." This is a murdery story. All day long he looked after the sheep, and towards evening he began to dig some little holes in the ground, out of which he took 6 scorpions. These he put into his pockets, together with 1 bird which he caught. After this, he drove the flock home. When he approached the house, the boys came out to meet him as before, saying, "Give me my bird!" And he put a scorpion into each hand, and it stung him, and he died. But only the youngest he gave the bird. As soon as he saw the boys lying dead on the ground, Mohammed lifted up his voice and cried loudly, "Help! Help! The children are dead!" And people came running fast, saying, "What happened? How have they died?" And Mohammed answered, "It was their own fault. The boys have been accustomed to birds, and on a bitter cold their fingers grew stiff, and could hold nothing, so that the birds flew away, and their spirits flew with them." Only the youngest, who managed to keep a tight hold of his bird, is still alive. And the father groaned and said,
I have borne enough. Bring no more birds, lest I lose the youngest also.
All right, said Mohammed. As he was driving the sheep out to the grass, he said to his master, "Out there is a splendid pasture, and I will keep the sheep there for 2, perhaps maybe 3 days, so do not be surprised at our absence."
Very good, said the man, and Mohammed started. For 2 days he drove them on and on, until he reached his uncle and said to him,
"Dear uncle, take these sheep and look after them. I have killed the old woman and the boys, and the flock I have brought to you."
Then Mohammed returned to his master, and on the way he took a stone and beat his head until he bled, and bound his hands and began to scream. The master came running and asked, "What's the matter?" And Mohammed answered, "While the sheep were grazing, robbers came and drove them away, and because I tried to prevent them, they struck me on the head and bound my hands. See how bloody I am?" "What shall we do?" said the master. "Are the animals far off?"
"So far that you're likely never to see them again," replied Mohammed. "This is the 4th day since the robbers came. You should be able to overtake them."
"Then go and herd the cows," said the man.
"All right," replied Mohammed,
and for 2 days he went, but on the 3rd day he drove the cows to his uncle, first cutting off their tails. Only 1 cow was left behind him.
"Take these cows to your uncle," he said. "I'm going to teach that man a lesson."
"Well, I suppose you know your own business best," said the uncle, and certainly he almost worried me to death. So Mohammed returned to his master, carrying the cows' tails tied up in a bundle on his back. And when he came to the seashore, he stuck all the tails in the sand and went and buried the 1 cow, whose tail he had not cut off up to the neck, leaving the tail projecting. After he got everything ready, he began to shriek and scream as before, till his master and all the other servants came running to see what was the matter. "How in the world has happened?"
"The sea has swallowed all the cows up," said Mohammed, "and nothing remains but their tails. But if you are quick and pull hard, perhaps you may get them out again."
The master ordered each man instantly to take a hold of a tail, and at first they nearly tumbled backwards, and the tails were left in their hands.
"Stop!" cried Mohammed. "You're doing it all wrong. You've just pulled off their tails, and the cows have sunk to the bottom of the sea."
"See if you can do any better," said they. And Mohammed ran to the cow which he had buried in the rough grass, and took a hold of her tail, and dragged the animal out at once.
"There, that is the way to do it," he said. "I told you knew nothing about it."
The men slunk away, much ashamed of themselves. But the master came up to Mohammed.
"Get you gone," he said. "There is nothing more for you to do. You have killed my mother, you have slain my children, and you have stolen my sheep and drowned my cows. I will give no more work to you." "First give me the strip of your skin which belongs to me by right, as you have broken our contract."
"That a judge shall decide," said the master. "We will go before him."
"Yes, we will," replied Mohammed.
And they went before the judge. "What is your case?" asked the judge of the master. "My lord," said the man, bowing lowly, "my shepherd here has robbed me of everything. He has killed my children and my old mother, and he has stolen my sheep and has drowned my cows in the sea." The shepherd answered, "He must pay me what he owes, and then I will go." "Yes, that is the law," said the judge. "Very well," returned the master. "Let him reckon up on how long he has been in my service."
"That won't do," replied Mohammed. "I want my strip of skin, as we agreed to in the contract."
Seeing there was no help for it, the master cut a bit of skin and gave it to Mohammed, who went off at once to his uncle.
"Now we are rich, dear uncle," he cried. "We will sell the cows and sheep and go to a new country. This one is no longer the place for us."
The sheep were soon sold, and the 2 comrades started on their travels. That night they reached some Bedouin tents, where they had supper with the Arabs. Before they lay down to sleep, Mohammed called the owner of the tent aside.
"Your greyhound will eat my strip of leather," he said to the Arab.
"No, do not fear."
"But supposing he does?"
"Well then, I will give him to you in exchange," replied the Arab. Mohammed waited until everyone was fast asleep. Then he rose softly, and tearing the bits of skin into pieces, he threw it down before the greyhound, letting up wild shrieks as he did so.
"Oh, master, did I not tell your dog would eat my thong?"
"Be quiet and don't make such a noise, and you shall have my dog." Mohammed put a leash around his neck and led him away. In the evening they arrived at the tents of more of the Bedouin and asked for shelter. After supper, Mohammed went to the owner of the tent.
"Your ram will kill my greyhound."
"Oh, no, he won't."
"And supposing he does?"
"Then you can take him in exchange." So in the night, Mohammed killed the greyhound and laid his body across the horns of the ram. And then he set up shrieks and yells till it roused the Arab, who said, "Take the ram and go away."
Mohammed did not need to be told twice,
and at sunset he reached another Bedouin encampment, and he was received kindly as usual. And after supper he said to his host, "Your daughter will kill my ram."
"Be silent, she will do nothing of the sort. My daughter does not need to steal meat, she has some every day." "Very well, I will go to sleep, but if anything happens to my ram, I will call out."
"If my daughter touches anything belonging to my guest, I will kill her," said the Arab, and he went to his bed. When everybody was asleep, Mohammed got up and killed the ram and took out his liver, which he broiled on the fire. He placed it in a piece of it on the girl's hands and laid some more on her nightdress while she slept, and knew nothing about it. After this, he began to cry out loudly. "What's the matter? Be silent at once," called the Arab.
"How can I be silent when my ram, which I loved like a child, has been slain by your daughter?"
"But my daughter is asleep," said the Arab.
"Well, go and see if she has not the flesh about her."
"If she has, you may take her in exchange for the ram." And as they found the flesh exactly where Mohammed had foretold, the Arab gave his daughter a good beating and then told her to get out of sight, for she was now the property of this stranger. They wandered in the deserts till at nightfall they came to a Bedouin encampment, where they were all hospitably bidden to enter. Before lying down, Mohammed said to the owner of the tent, "Your mare will kill my wife."
"Certainly not." "And if she does?"
"Then you may take the mare in exchange." Well, everyone was asleep. Mohammed said softly to his wife,
"Maiden, I have got such a clever plan. I'm going to bring in the mare and put it at your feet, and I will cut you, just a few little flesh wounds, that you may be covered with blood, and everybody will suppose that you're to be dead. But remember that you must not make a sound, or we shall both be lost."
This was done. Then Mohammed wept and wailed louder than ever. The Arab hastened to the spot and cried, "Oh, cease making that terrible noise. Take the mare and go, but carry off the dead girl with you. She can lie quite easily across the mare's back." Then Mohammed and his uncle picked up the girl and, placing her on the mare's back, led it away, being very careful to walk on one side or the other, so that she might not slip down and hurt herself. After the Arab tents could no longer be seen, the girl sat up in the saddle and looked about her. And as they were hungry, they tied up the mare and took out some dates to eat. When they had finished, Mohammed said to his uncle, "Dear uncle, the maiden shall be your wife. I give her to you. But the money we got from the sheep and the cows we will divide between us. You shall have 2/3, and I shall have 1. For you will have a wife, and I never mean to marry. And now go in peace. Forevermore you will never see me. The bond of bread and salt is at an end between us." So they wept and fell on each other's necks, and asked forgiveness for any wrongs in the past. Then they parted and went their ways.